pods in Chicago now as opposed to everybody going to 59th Street. And so, like I said, that's what we're working on this week. I'm in transit, so I'm going to put myself on mute, and then Natasha, when you need me, just let me know, and I can come back on.
Okay, that sounds good. I know that Dee is on and listening. I don't know if, well, we have a question, and I don't know if it'd be best, for Dee to answer. And it's about the conciliation process. So let's see if, Dee, if you want me to go ahead and let me see if I see your cell phone number in here. Sorry, everybody. We're just getting everybody logged in. Look at Dee. Okay, hey Dee, I'm not sure if you can see the screen or not, but I unmuted you. And so one of our
I'm here.
Okay, so I think you're the best person because you're the expert on this conciliation process. Carmen, Carmen said with National Level said, I'm still confused about the conciliation process. The 2846G form directs clients to meet their DHS caseworker, not the CBO. On top of this, once a client has shown up and shown a good reason for not participating, I'm confused as to the next step as they still seem unable or unwilling to meet requirements in many cases. Is that something that we need to get back to Carmen on that type of information?
Well, the 2846G is for the person to fill out to send to the customer on so that they can schedule the appointment. Then if the customer does not show up to the conciliation appointment, then we case note it and do the non-cooperation. Sorry, I'm driving. My GPS is on.
Okay.
The caseworker should be noted for the caseworker, and it should be a message sent that the person did not show up. Then it becomes incumbent upon DHS to take the next steps from there. If the person never, ever shows up for orientation, it's on DHS. So did that answer Carmen's question?
Carmen is typing now.
Okay.
Okay, can a new form or a version of the form be created that actually tells a person where to go instead of directing them to DHS?
Oh, it's on the 2846G. I think you can enter your address in there instead of, I think there's a notes place on there that you can put to show up at the CBO office.
Okay. Okay, Olivia said that she said, yeah, okay. Olivia is going to go ahead and screen share and show you.
And then if the person shows up at the meeting, then there's a 3392, I think that's the number, that they fill out, and that gets the person to commit to cooperate. And then if they don't cooperate after that, they automatically get sanctioned. They don't have to go through a second conciliation process.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Carmen? Okay. Yeah, and just so I know Dee's on transit too, but just so you know, Dee, it says I must have the older version of this form. Olivia, can you send me the one? Yeah. So anyway, so yes, that should sound like it should take care of
The 2846G is on the restricted resources page, so she has access to everybody. All the CBOs have access to that form, to all of those forms, if they go to Epic Partners and the restricted resources page.
Right. Yep. Yep. Thank you. Okay. So we'll move on to the next topic unless somebody has anything. Okay. Carmen says thank you, Dee and Olivia. And so the next topic was about the, we have Emily with us, who's with Mathematica, and so if you have any questions related to the cost data collection, please enter them because Emily's with us now and can answer any of those questions that you might have. Or Emily, you know, in the meantime, while they're thinking about questions or typing them, are there any things that pop up usually that you know, maybe like some FAQ things that they haven't, or you know, may not be to that point of thinking about those items yet?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone, this is Emily Snook with Mathematica. So when you're filling out the workbook, something that trips people up a little bit on the staff and volunteers page, which is a huge component of the workbook, is that you need to estimate some various aspects of people's time and how they spend their time. And they have very different categories. So for each person, you need to indicate how many hours they work per week. And that's on anything. So if they work full-time, you might put 40 hours there, 37 and a half, 50, you know, whatever's full-time for you. If you have somebody who only works 20 hours a week, you would put 20 there. And that's just in general, how much do they work. And then you need to indicate the percent of their time that they spend on the pilot. So what you want to think about there is, in a typical week of those hours, so let's say you said 40 hours for somebody. In a typical week, how many of those hours are they spending on the pilot? And just do that division. So if you think they spend about an hour a day, so 5 hours a week on the pilot, you would just do 5 over 40, which is, I guess I need to get my calculator out here. It's about 13% of their time. So that's the number that you would put as the percent of time that they spend on the pilot. And then the next thing you have to estimate is the percent of pilot time that they spend on evaluation activities. So here, the denominator is those 5 hours that they typically spend on the pilot in a given week, and you're trying to see how much of that is spent on evaluation activities. So that might be filling out the cost workbook or attending a training for the evaluation or something like that. So let's say they typically spend about 2 hours of their week on that activity. Then you would do 2 over 5, which gives you about 40% of their time. So that can be pretty tricky because you essentially have a different denominator for each calculation. But that's sort of how we want you to think about it. And those instructions are included above the table. Just so you know, those instructions are included, but it can be a little bit confusing.
Yeah, are there any questions? I mean, has anybody like personally been like going through this experience of filling this out, or?
Emily, this is Tammy. Can you kind of walk through the facility costs again and how they should calculate those?
Yep, sure. So the last tab in the workbook talks about overhead and operating costs. So I'll just talk about that whole tab. The first section, we need an estimate of your overhead. So let's say somebody needs to travel to a training or travel to visit a client. You would put that in this table. So you name the item, so travel. You describe it, so travel to see clients as an example, and you estimate the cost. So let's say in that reporting period, which is a quarter, let's say people spent, all together across all of your staff, you spent about $200 a week on travel, and that's over the course of a quarter, which is 12 weeks. So you would put $2,400 as the cost. And then the next column is the percent of that cost paid for with pilot funds. So here, if you paid for none of it with pilot funds, you would say 0%. If you paid for all of it, you would say 100%, or anything in between. But if it's something that is bigger, so let's say you, trying to think of a good example, let's say you pay for payroll. You put payroll as the item and you say payment to a contractor for processing our payroll. What we want in the cost column is the total cost for your organization, and then we want the percent of that cost paid with pilot funds. So let's say the total cost was $100 and this grant paid for 1% of that. We would want to see 100 and then 1%. We wouldn't want to see, another option would be to calculate the amount that you spent, put that in the cost column, but then what you need to do is put 100% in the percent paid for with pilot funds. So we need to be able to use those two columns to see how much you actually spent from the pilot on that expense. The next section is on facilities. So you name your facility, so you might have a headquarters office, you might have cubicle space that you rent. Those would all be different lines on this facilities table. You choose the type of facility, so you have three options here, and there's a drop-down menu. An administration office, a program office, or a training facility, so you just choose one of those. Then the next column is what's your relationship to the facility? Do you own it? Are you leasing it? Are you renting it? Or was it donated? And there's a drop-down menu for that as well. Then you indicate the total cost of the facility during that reporting period. So you report the total facility cost in whichever way is easiest for you. So the next column's drop-down menu is the reported cost is weekly or monthly or annually. So if it's easiest for you to say this is how much we spend on this facility every year, you can put that in the total facility cost column, and then you can just choose annual. So if it's easiest for you to do weekly or monthly or annually, you can choose any of those things. We just want the cost to match up with whichever way you're reporting the cost, which you choose from the drop-down menu. Then you say the percent of cost paid for with SNAP pilot funds, so anywhere between 0 and 100%. Then we're trying to estimate the usage of the facility. So what percent of the facility was used for pilot activities? So if it's your headquarter office, only 25% of the facility might be used for the grant, or 1% or 100%. There's varying sort of options there, but we want to understand how much of that facility is used for the pilot. Then you say the months used by the pilot, so that's during the reporting period only. So it would be anywhere between 0 to 4 months, or to 3 months, I'm sorry. And then you're going to estimate your utility costs. So some people have leases where the utilities are included in the lease amount that you pay. So here you would just want to write a note in the utilities section that just says our utility costs are included in the amount we pay in rent for our lease. Otherwise, you can report your phone, internet, telecommunications costs, your heat, water, electricity costs, and any other utilities, and then you're going to indicate the percent of the cost that was paid for with pilot funds. The last section is about indirect costs. So did you have an indirect cost rate that was charged to the grant during the reporting period? If so, was it a federally negotiated rate, or does the agency calculate the rate? What is the rate? How much was paid in indirect costs during the reporting period only? And then what is included in that indirect cost rate? So all of our administration and mailing is included in the indirect cost rate, or all the salaries of everyone who's in accounting are included. Those are the kinds of things you would want to say, these are the expenses to which the indirect cost rate is applied. Was there anything else specific that you were thinking about for that tab?
This is Tammy, and I just have one comment on indirect costs. With the EPIC grant for the CBOs, most of the costs are direct costs, is specific, to clients. So indirect costs really only applies to admin, and our admin is capped at 5%. So I just wanted to remind you guys of that. And we do have a few that have federal indirect cost rates, and we are establishing a state system to do that too. It's not, up and running totally yet. But as far as indirect for this grant is concerned, it primarily is just for admin.
Okay, thank you.
It looks like Jennifer's typing. Maybe Jennifer will have a question here. Any other things that you can, okay. Question, do we report contracted agencies facilities?
That is a good question. I think I would need to hear about the specific situation that you are referring to. So that might be more on a case-by-case basis. There is a section where you report anyone who you are paying, an entity you're paying money to provide those services, pilot services. So it sounds like the contractor might fall under that category. And you would include the amount paid to the service provider. So if that amount includes their facility costs, you would include that on that tab. And another thing is just that the facility costs are meant to capture where agencies are directly providing services to clients. So if you're not providing services to clients in your facility, you do not need to include facility costs for your organization. If you are if you're receiving an itemized invoice from a contractor and you know that you're paying for those facilities where they're providing services, then you would probably report that on the facilities tab, but we would probably want to talk about that more in detail based on each individual situation.
So who should they contact for those specific questions? Should they contact us and then we forward them to you, or contact you directly, or how do you want to?
They can contact us. I sent out all of the workbooks, so they can just reply all to that email to ask the question, and then Tammy will be aware of it because she was CC'd on all of those emails, and then we'll be able to, so she can provide any context that's necessary, and then we can take care of the question. There's another question about when the report is due. We would like to see these back by September 2nd, which is in about 3 weeks. And we'll probably be sending you a follow-up email about a week before that, just to remind you. But we would like to get those back before Labor Day. Let me just read this other question. I'll read it aloud. I understand that supportive services may include transportation assistance, daycare, work clothes, tools, or supplies. I wanted to know if an EPIC participant needed additional monies to cover the cost of books after exhausting training funds. Would this be an allowable cost? That gets at a really, really pertinent question about the cost workbook. So this is not a workbook where you're reporting back to the people giving you these funds in order to say where they're going. What our job is to evaluate what the actual cost of doing this program is. So in the big picture sense, we're trying to see what's the cost-benefit analysis to the government and to taxpayer money for doing this pilot program. If another organization and agency and state decided to implement it, how much should they expect it to cost them, and what's the benefit to the government and to society at large, right? So the costs that we're looking to capture are the actual costs that you're experiencing associated with the pilot and with pilot participants. So if you're going to give a pilot participant extra funds that wouldn't necessarily be paid for with the grant, would be paid for out of overhead or a discretionary fund that you can use however you'd like, those are real costs associated with the pilot, and those should be reported. So I hope that answered your question. There is no sort of such, for the workbook, there's nothing that's an allowable or unallowable cost. We want to see all of the costs associated with your serving these pilot participants and your administering the pilot. So Margaret had a question about if an email went out about this recently and that she had not received one. These went out a week ago on the 3rd, and they went to one contact at each agency. So it's possible that we didn't have, that it went to somebody else at your agency, or that we had outdated contact information.
And this is Tammy. If you did not get the workbook, if you want to send me an email, because I was CC'd on all of those, I will forward that on to you, and then we'll make sure that the appropriate person is getting the workbook.
Thanks, Tammy.
So this is real important. This is Dee. This is real important why you need to keep the CBO contact list updated. And Olivia G., I don't know if we uploaded that into the file pod, the most current version, but if you could do that before everybody gets off the call so they can double check it if they have any changes.
Yes, it's there. It's in the look. Yes.
Thanks.
Yep. Hi. Good. Any other questions related to the cost information? Alrighty.
I also just wanted to point out, if you're not sure if you're filling it out correctly, if you want to fill it out to the best of your understanding and ability and send it to me and just say, this is a draft version, can you take a look at it and let me know if anything looks out of place? I can take a look at it and I can sort of try to explain more in depth anything that looks a little bit off. That's totally fine. So if you want to do that, maybe by the end of, maybe by the 26th, I can try to take a look at it, or a little bit earlier would probably be better, so I can get it back to you in time to make some of those changes. That's totally fine, and I would rather work with you earlier on the front end so that you make sure that so I know that you have the grasp of what we're trying to capture, because that will make the rest of the workbooks much, much easier, because you're just going to be updating numbers and not inputting a ton of information. So you want to get this first one as complete and full and accurate as possible, because it will make your job easier for the next workbook. And I think that's all from me.
I think it is. Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, I did see everybody, some people had gone ahead and filled out the information about, what areas where they have questions or they need some more information. And I was planning on going over the exit status information. I noticed that at least one person had a question about the progress page, enrollment, exit status, ISTEP, training programs, schedule, and I think we already covered anybody on conciliation. But if you were a person that indicated that you'd like more information about one of those areas, please go ahead and put your questions in the chat pod, and either I or Olivia will answer those, as they come up. I did want to go over some of the updates and for the exit information, and we do have the instructions and some information about each of the exit status items, whether it's what type of exit it is. Is it a successful completion or unsuccessful completion? And then also the training program requirements, and then an example if the required documentation, if additional documentation is required, just to show that this is what they're doing since they have exited the program. So this document is available in the lower left-hand corner that you can download. It's also available from the partner guide. So Olivia, whenever we send out, she always sends out an update, can provide you with direct access to this document as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump into this information real quick. We're going to start with the enrolled dashboard. And the enrolled dashboard has been updated to include the completion status. And so you'll see in each of these, the completion status for hired by employer requires a follow-up period. So as long as the people are within the 90-day follow-up from the exit date, then they'll stay in this white section. As soon as they are outside of that follow-up date and documentation needs to be uploaded, they'll fall into this exit status, documentation needs to be uploaded. If you go into any of these anybody and you say, they were successfully completed and enrolled in training, enlisted in the military, and you don't have the 2151 or related documentation included with that, they're going to fall in this yellow area because there's still something that needs to be done for those customers. So as soon as you have the uploaded 2151 on the related documentation, then they will fall into the appropriate categories, either the green or the red, so successful or unsuccessful. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump in. Again, I'm on test, so we'll take a look at their progress page. We made some updates, and we covered this last week. But if you weren't able to join us, you'll notice that, and I know some people have already been doing their exit status, which is great. And so you can see that we have, these are all in like classable areas, show hide, so you can see the contact information and uploading and everything. So with the exit information, You'll identify what type of exit it is, successful, unsuccessful. You know, if you change this to unsuccessful, then the options change. I can't remember where I hit this hat already, but, and then the exit date, and then whenever it's going to give you a list, so you can update the information, and the items, it's going to tell you what you still need to have. So if you still need the 2151 form uploaded, or if you needed additional documentation, it'll tell you on this page if you need to have additional items uploaded. And just remember that whenever you upload the 2151 form, if they have completed the program, then you need to mark that they have, you know, that option that they've completed the program. And whenever you upload the 2151 form, it'll automatically update the dashboard.
2151A, isn't it, Natasha?
Yes, thank you. 2151A. Okay, so there was a question here. We have several components that a customer could potentially go through before becoming enrolled in the industry job training program, like job readiness, ABE, blah, blah, yeah. Okay, should I add the additional areas of participation to our training schedule? Okay, that's a good question. So one of the things that whenever you go to a person and you enroll them, again, I'm in test, so I'm just going to have to find a person real quick. I'm going to go to this person. And I'm going to select the progress page. And so this person has all the, it looks like, at least from my training dashboard, it looks like they, you know, are ready to be enrolled into a training program. So even, and it says right here, identify the training program assignment for this person. The actual start and completion date and status will be recorded in the customer's individualized service and training employment plan. So what that means is as soon as you have accepted them into your program, go ahead and enroll them. So if you are a location that offers more than one training program, then you can select that. After your initial assessments and you determine that this person is only, you know, the only way it's going to work for them is employment services only, then that's what you would select, and you update their enrollment. Okay, so we're just going to pick one, and so I enrolled this person. And then I'd have to fill out their 2151A and so forth. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is so even if they haven't actually started the training program yet, go ahead and enroll them into the program because that's going to reserve a spot for them. So when you get close to your capacity or what you have identified as capacity for your training programs, then that's not going to show up in, you know, in the recommended training programs anymore because you don't have capacity for them. So we want to make sure that if this person, you know, this person has been identified to participate in a particular training program, that you enroll them now, so you basically reserve their spot for them. And then what you're going to do is you go into the ISTEP, and if they have any, you know, different types of services, you know, we have in here drug referral treatment, treatment referral, utility assistance, food pantry, but there's other information here like transportation and so forth. You can add those into the ISTEP. The career planning, so this would be your job readiness activities that you could identify, and you should be identifying what type of job readiness activities that they're doing, because whenever you look at this, it'll identify each of these steps as a service. Some of them are self-access services, and some are staff-assisted. And it'll populate, you know, the dashboard, the ISTEP dashboard, and their list of services. So whenever they do that, they can, you know, you can see what services are currently open, what are past due, and, you know, what services are already complete, if they finish that step or a service. Now you mentioned with the adult basic ed or, into the training program. So we have different, I guess you call steps, that are training program options that you can identify for this person. And so you can identify, if they are going to be in a bridge program, or if they need an adult basic ed program, or an ESL program, or if they are in one of these 3 types of EPIC training programs. So you can go ahead and add these, whichever one that the person is. So we'll select one of these EPIC training programs for this particular person. And then you've added them, and if they don't start until, September, you can identify, the expected start and end date and add that information for this person.
And Natasha, this is Tammy. Just to interject on that, if they do have like a later actual start date for their training program, you still have to be engaging them because they're still required to be engaged, 20 hours a week. So that would be with your work readiness or other activities that you're working on with them. It could be community service or it could be work experience.
Right. So, so most definitely using the career planning, the recommended next steps, being able to, identify the different things that they're working on and the time frame. It's just, again, more to support to the hours that they'll be working, expected to work on that to support the 2151A. Okay, so there's a question on the exit status. Am I supposed to go ahead and click successful completion with an exit date of the first day of class? And am I doing this once the semester is complete or when they are set to start? On the exit status, don't exit them until they're exited. So we want to show that they're currently enrolled. So once they have completed their training and you're done with them, they're no longer with you, they're no longer part of your responsibility, then you can exit them. So, for example, they go through training and, with the hired by employer, they're still with you for another 90 days. So you'll be completing the 2151 form for 3 more months. If they have enrolled in the military or, enrolled in training and listed in the military, and they're, moving on, whatever, again, once that happens and once you have documentation that it's happened, then, you can mark them as exited. One of the questions that came up early on is that, well, what happens, like, if a person is not SNAP eligible? Do I exit them from the program? Do I keep them in the program? And it's really up to the CBO. If you know that the person is only going to not be SNAP eligible for, a limited period of time, you may not want to exit them. You might want to keep them. Or if training has been, already paid for, they can continue to go through training, but they just can't receive other, no additional costs can be, no additional money can be spent on them until they're SNAP eligible again. So, it's really up to you if you want to keep them as, continue to be enrolled and not exited, because of course we want them to have a successful outcome rather than an unsuccessful one. So then let's see here. Okay, so the next one. Do we go back and complete this for old clients? So I am assuming, because you had typed that earlier, I'm assuming that you are referring to the ISTEP in completing that for the old clients? And if so, yes, we need to go ahead, and that's how we're using the ISTEP to collect the information on what services are being provided and where they are within that, as part of that service, when their completion dates are expected, when they're expected to be complete, but then also the credentials. So let me go ahead and go to this example where I had added this person for the credential. One of the things that you can do is, we'll just say this person is, they started the program. Some of your courses, your coursework will allow them to earn credentials as they go through the process or go through the training, so they can earn multiple credentials at any given time throughout their training program. So you can just say this, yes, a credential was earned, and I'm just going to select some information here. And type in something here, and then save this information. And now you can see that this person has earned a credential, and you know exactly which step they were in when they earned that credential. So if they've earned more than one credential, you can say yes, they earned another credential. So you can keep saying yes. So you can add as many credentials that are associated with that training program. One of the kind of the neat things is that if you want to see an overall view of all the services and credentials that they've earned, you get a list view of all the services that have been provided for that customer. And you can also see a list of credentials that have been earned for that customer all in one place. And if you're looking at this credential and you're like, well, where did this come from? You can click on View Step, and it'll take you to that exact step within the ISTEP. Okay. So then Eric had a question, not that we're there, but for permanent job placement and retention, 30, 60, 90. What type of verification documents will be accessible as proof of employment for the client file? The work number, or for example, work number, can we create a program verification form? Hey, Tammy, that would be a question for you as far as, is there any type of documentation that is required for permanent job placement?
Yeah, yes, there is. And we want to keep in line with what DHS requirements are because, like I said, we're hoping this thing, is sustainable down the road. What they allow for is the work number, an IDES, obviously, the data system. But then one of the things that they also want to see is paycheck stubs. And we actually had a conversation with the provider today, and we're talking with Natasha on this, is a method that maybe the client can actually do a phone shot of their paycheck stub and then upload that into their ISTEP program. So then that way, because they want to see each paycheck. And for them, it's 120 days. So we're going to keep in line with that. So those are the things, the work number, IDES, data verification, and then paycheck stub. Does that help?
It looks like it. Looks like it. Yep. Eric said thanks.
Yeah. And we think this is something that actually just kind of was a revelation, I guess, when we were out in the field, thanks to Failing. As if we can, if the clients can actually do a snapshot of their own pay stubs and upload them themselves, that we may have better success with actually getting those from the client.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. We have a question for Mary Beth. We have 2 clients with recommend sanctions steps waiting to hear from DHS. Should we wait to exit these 2 for negative reasons? My opinion is I would try to get with the DHS, caseworker and see, what the status is on that. Because, again, we definitely want everybody to be successful. And the other thing is we especially want them to be successful and do everything we can to make them successful because, you know, it is a study. And we want to do everything we can to keep the treatment group people active and engaged in anything that we can learn as to ways to, you know, encourage, you know, what are approaches for keeping these individuals engaged or, you know, inspiring them to get engaged in the first place. You know, we might have to put the extra effort in to be in the beginning and learning more about that, you know, so we can find out strategies for in the future whenever it's not a study.
And Mary, I think Mary Beth is in Chicago, and one of the things that we need to remember with Chicago is we're going through the decentralization process. Everybody that was in 59th Street, except for maybe 4 people, have been pushed out to, I think, 9 other offices, and they have not been re-influxed into the particular offices where they have been sent. So there's going to be a lull period for you to be able to hear from the caseworker because everybody's going to have to get reassigned. McMorris isn't going to be doing everybody's primary contact anymore.
Good point. And so Mary Beth said, okay, we'll hold tight and wait to hear back. Thanks. So
great.
Looks like we have some more typing. Okay. What about upcoming staffing that are scheduled?
Again, I think we're going to have to hold tight on those for just a little while. Just go ahead and fill out the paperwork, but hold it
I would think
right
if Chris has scheduled one, I would anticipate he might stick with it unless you hear differently from Chris. But I think that the staffing scheduling is going to be, it's changing with its decentralization. But if you do have something scheduled, I would reach out to Chris. What's that?
Is Chris on the webinar, Olivia or Natasha?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I would, if you have one already, a scheduled date with him, just follow up with him, because he may be continuing what he's already scheduled. But like Dee said, since it's been decentralized, systems are changing out in the DHS offices, and there will be a slowdown. And we're doing training the next 2 weeks for the DHS staff, and there's going to be a slowdown on a referral too. But then once everybody's up and running, I anticipate that it's going to increase dramatically.
Yeah, we just added 30 more laptops, so that means 30 more customers every morning or afternoon. Maybe 60 a day.
Okay. Okay, any other questions? Okay, system question. Is there a way to possibly add an edit function to the case note? Okay, let me just, I will ask this question. We'll take it to our programmer. If it's a simple fix, then we'll do it right away. If it's not a simple implementation, then we'll do it, but it might not happen right away.
And ask them, Natasha, do they mean ones that they've entered or an automatic case note?
Okay. Yeah, and I would assume that we would only be able to do it to the ones that they, the person themselves. You could edit your own, but nobody else's. Yeah, it's in my entry, so.
All right.
Okay, and so Carmen has the same request regarding case notes, so. Yeah, we'll definitely take it to them, and hopefully it's an easy implementation something. So, okay, any other questions? Topics that need to be covered that we haven't covered already? All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. And
I do have one thing. I have one thing for them to think about. For those of you who have been doing this with the SNAP program already, for the 20 hours a week, if they're not doing, if they're done with Employment 101, if they're done with the resume review, what other activities have you engaged people in to keep them busy until a training program starts? So think about this. I want to talk about it next week.
okay. And it looks like Olivia has something too, so let me unmute her.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to go over one thing real quick. Something that I've been noticing has been messing some customers up in the dashboard is that if a customer does not attend their appointment, we have a lot of people going in and just deleting that appointment out of Epic and not necessarily adding a new appointment. We don't want to do that. Only delete the appointment out of Epic if you are adding in a new appointment. So then we can know what was the last appointment they missed when we started the conciliation process with them. And it'll also help them flow easier on the dashboard. That was the big thing that I wanted to go over. And then for the case notes, later today we're also going to be pushing out an update that will allow you to have more character space in your case notes. It won't limit you as much. And I believe that is all that I needed to go over.
Any questions or about the appointments? How to handle any of those? Or any weird scenarios that have come up? Right. I don't see anyone typing. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. And if you have any questions, as always, send them to epic@illinoisworknet.com. And we will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye.